Good evening and welcome. Tonight, we invite you to slow down, settle in, and gently step away from the modern world as we travel back in time far from comfort, convenience, and certainty into a single ordinary day in the American Wild West of the 1870s. This is not the Wild West of legend or cinema, not a place of heroic standoffs and perfectly pressed hats. Instead, this is a quieter, grittier world, where survival itself is the main achievement, and where simply making it from morning to night requires endurance, patience, and resilience. Let us begin our journey there, at the very start of the day, before the sun fully rises over the frontier. Life in the 1870s Wild West is harsh in ways that are difficult to imagine today. There is dust everywhere on clothes, in hair, between teeth, and floating constantly in the air. It coats wooden floors, settles on windowsills, and clings stubbornly to skin no matter how often one tries to wipe it away. Towns are built quickly and cheaply, with little thought for comfort or beauty. Wooden buildings lean slightly as if tired from standing too long against wind and heat. Streets are unpaved, churned into dry ruts by wagon wheels and hooves, and when the wind blows, it lifts clouds of dirt that sting the eyes and scratch the throat. This is the environment you wake up to every morning, and there is no escaping it. The romantic image of the Wild West suggests freedom and adventure, but daily life is defined instead by discomfort and limitation. Resources are scarce, and nothing comes easily. Clean water must be hauled by hand, often from questionable sources. Food is simple, repetitive, and chosen for durability rather than taste. Clothing is worn until it can no longer be repaired, then worn some more. Every object around you has been used, reused, and patched together, often by your own hands. Waste is not just discouraged, it is unthinkable. Even small luxuries are rare, and when they appear, they are cherished quietly rather than celebrated. As the day begins, there is no soft transition from sleep to wakefulness. You do not rise refreshed. Sleep itself is light and broken, interrupted by noises from outside and inside alike. Wooden walls do little to block sound, and the town wakes early. Horses snort and stamp their hooves. Wagons creak as they are loaded for the day. Somewhere nearby, a door slams, followed by voices already strained from a life of shouting over wind and distance. Inside your room, the air is stale and heavy, carrying the mixed smells of sweat, dust, and old fabric. The mattress beneath you is thin, stuffed with straw that has long since lost its softness, poking uncomfortably through worn cloth. There is no sense of privacy here. If you are staying in a boarding house, you share space with others who are just as tired and just as resigned to the conditions. Personal boundaries are a luxury of the future. Everyone hears everyone else wake up, cough, move, and groan. The day begins not because you feel ready, but because the world around you refuses to stay quiet any longer. Rest is never complete, and exhaustion becomes a background state of being, something you learn to live with rather than overcome. The heat arrives early, especially in warmer months. Even before the sun climbs high, the air already feels dry and pressing. Windows, if they exist at all, offer little relief. Opening them invites more dust inside, but closing them traps the heat. There is no good choice, only the selection of which discomfort you prefer. Sweat begins almost immediately, and it will stay with you for the rest of the day. In this environment, the body is always aware of itself, always aching slightly, always thirsty, always aware of hunger or fatigue. What makes this life especially difficult is how ordinary all of it feels to the people living it. There is no sense that this is an extreme experience, no expectation that conditions should be better. Hardship is not an event. It is the default. Children grow up knowing no other reality. Adults measure success not by comfort or happiness, but by endurance. If the roof does not leak too badly, if illness has not struck this week, if food is available for another day, then things are considered acceptable. Gratitude is quiet and practical, never dramatic. The environment itself is unpredictable and often unforgiving. Sudden storms can turn dry ground into thick mud that traps wagons and makes travel impossible. Long dry spells bring shortages of water and crops, tightening already limited supplies. There is little protection from nature's shifts, and planning can only go so far. People learn to read the sky, the wind, and the behavior of animals, relying on observation rather than forecasts. Even then, surprises are common, and they often come with consequences that ripple through daily life. In this world, time moves differently. There is no constant clock watching, no precise scheduling. The rhythm of the day is shaped by light, weather, and necessity. Work begins when it must and ends when it can. Tasks take as long as they take. Waiting is a common activity, waiting for water to boil, for food to cook, for supplies to arrive, for heat to ease. Patience is not a virtue here. It is a requirement. Those who cannot learn it quickly find themselves overwhelmed. Despite everything, people continue. They form routines because routines offer structure in a place where so much is uncertain. Simple habits, waking, eating, working, resting, become anchors. Conversation, when it happens, is often brief and practical, focused on immediate needs rather than distant dreams. Humor exists, but it is dry and understated, a way to release tension rather than escape reality. Complaining serves little purpose, and so it fades into silence. What stands out most, when looking closely at this life, is not its drama but its persistence. The Wild West is not a constant series of exciting moments. It is long stretches of effort punctuated by brief pauses. It is waking up tired and going to bed tired, day after day, with little variation. And yet, people endure. They adapt to discomfort until it becomes familiar. They measure progress in small ways: a repaired boot, a successful meal, a day without trouble. As the morning fully arrives and the sun climbs higher, the town settles into its daily rhythm. The dust rises again underfoot. The heat strengthens. Work begins, not with enthusiasm, but with acceptance. This is life on the frontier, unpolished, demanding, and stripped of illusion. And as we move deeper into this day, we begin to understand that surviving here is not about bravery or glory, but about resilience, about waking up each morning and choosing, once again, to continue. Morning in the 1870s Wild West does not arrive gently. It forces itself into existence through noise, movement, and discomfort. You wake not because you feel rested, but because the world around you has already begun. The boarding house is alive long before the sun fully rises, and its thin wooden walls offer no barrier between your senses and the lives of everyone else inside. The room you sleep in is small and crowded, designed for function rather than comfort. Several beds may share the same space, each one narrow and pressed close to the next. There is barely enough room to walk without brushing against another person or bumping into a rough wooden post. Personal belongings are few and kept close: boots under the bed, a coat folded at the foot, maybe a hat hanging from a nail in the wall. Nothing is truly private, and nothing feels temporary, even though few people plan to stay forever. The mattress beneath you is thin and uneven, stuffed with straw that shifts and crunches with every movement. Over time, the straw breaks down, forming hard clumps that press into your back and shoulders. Turning in your sleep offers little relief. The fabric covering the mattress is worn smooth in places and rough in others, patched repeatedly to keep it usable. Sheets, if they exist at all, are coarse and often shared between guests over long periods, washed infrequently due to the effort required to heat water and dry fabric. The air inside the room is heavy and stale. During the night, windows are usually kept closed to keep out the cold, insects, or blowing dust, and by morning the space feels thick with warmth and lingering smells. Sweat, damp clothing, old wood, and dust mix together into a scent that no one remarks on anymore because it is simply part of life. Breathing deeply feels unnecessary. Short, shallow breaths become the norm without conscious thought. Sounds fill the boarding house from every direction. Someone nearby coughs repeatedly, a dry, tired sound that echoes against the walls. Another person shifts on their mattress, causing the wooden frame to creak loudly. Footsteps thud overhead or down the hall, uneven and heavy, as someone else rises early to claim a moment at the wash basin. Outside, horses stamp and snort, their presence impossible to ignore. Somewhere, a wagon wheel groans as it turns slowly across the dirt street. There is no alarm clock, but none is needed. The building itself announces the morning. Doors open and close. Floorboards complain under constant use. Voices murmur, then grow louder as people shake off sleep and prepare themselves for the day. Conversations are short and practical, exchanged without ceremony. No one asks how you slept, because everyone already knows the answer. Getting out of bed requires effort. Muscles are stiff from long days of work and nights spent in awkward positions. The floor beneath your feet is cold in the early morning, the wood worn smooth by countless steps. Dust clings immediately to bare skin, settling between toes and along ankles. You pause for a moment, not out of reflection, but simply to let your body adjust to standing again. Privacy, in the modern sense, does not exist here. Changing clothes happens in full view of others, done quickly and without embarrassment. Everyone understands the unspoken rule of looking without really seeing. Modesty is practical rather than emotional, shaped by necessity instead of choice. Clothing itself offers little comfort. Shirts are stiff, trousers heavy, seams rough against skin, but they are familiar, and familiarity counts for something. The heat, even this early, begins to make itself known. In warmer months, the room never truly cools overnight. By morning, the air already feels dry and pressing. In colder seasons, the opposite is true. The chill settles into bones, and breath briefly fogs the air. Either way, the temperature is something you endure, not something you control. There is no adjustment beyond adding or removing a layer and hoping for the best. As people move about the room, space becomes even tighter. Someone stoops to lace boots, elbows brushing against a neighboring bed. Another person reaches for a coat, accidentally knocking against a wall. Apologies are brief or unnecessary. Everyone understands that the space is shared and that small collisions are inevitable. Irritation exists, but it rarely surfaces. Energy is conserved for more important tasks. Light enters slowly, filtering through small windows clouded with dust and grime. It is a muted, yellowish glow rather than bright sunlight, and it reveals more imperfections than beauty. Scratches on the floor, stains on the walls, and worn patches on clothing become visible as the room brightens. Nothing here is new, and nothing is expected to be. The boarding house serves a specific purpose, it provides shelter, nothing more. It is not meant to be restful, welcoming, or inspiring. It is a place to sleep because sleep is necessary. Comfort is secondary, sometimes irrelevant. Those who stay here accept this arrangement without question. Complaints change nothing, and expectations are kept low to avoid disappointment. Despite the crowding and discomfort, there is a quiet sense of routine. People know where to step, when to move, how to prepare themselves without causing unnecessary disruption. This unspoken coordination develops over time, born from shared experience rather than instruction. In a place where chaos could easily take over, routine becomes a stabilizing force. As the morning continues, the boarding house gradually empties. Some leave early for labor that begins at dawn. Others linger briefly, stretching sore backs or adjusting worn clothing. Each departure is marked by the sound of boots on wood, the creak of a door, and then the muffled noise of the street beyond. With every person who leaves, the room grows slightly quieter, though never truly silent. This is how the day begins in the Wild West, not with excitement or anticipation, but with endurance. Waking up is not a pleasure. It is a task, completed because it must be. The boarding house, crowded and uncomfortable, shapes the mindset of those who pass through it. It teaches adaptability, patience, and acceptance. And as you step outside into the dusty morning air, you carry that mindset with you, knowing that the challenges of the day have already begun, long before the work itself starts. Once you are fully awake, it becomes clear that silence is not part of life in the 1870s Wild West. Noise is constant, layered, and unavoidable. It seeps into every moment of the day, beginning before sunrise and lingering long after night falls. Even in moments when no one is speaking, the environment itself produces sound: wood expanding with heat, animals shifting their weight, wind pushing dust along the street. Quiet, as a concept, feels distant and unfamiliar. Inside the boarding house, sound travels freely. Walls are thin, built quickly from rough planks that leave small gaps where air and noise pass without resistance. Every movement announces itself. Footsteps echo sharply across wooden floors. Beds creak with the smallest shift of weight. Doors never close softly, no matter how carefully someone tries. A dropped object, boots, a cup, a tool, creates a sudden, jarring crash that pulls everyone's attention for a brief moment before life continues. Voices blend together in the morning hours. Some people speak in low tones, conserving energy. Others speak loudly by habit, shaped by years of calling across open land or noisy streets. Laughter is short and rough-edged. Arguments, when they happen, are blunt and practical, focused on immediate concerns rather than emotion. There is little room for dramatic expression when so much effort is required just to get through the day. Outside, the town adds its own constant soundtrack. Horses stamp their hooves against packed dirt, shaking flies from their legs. Harnesses jingle as animals are prepared for work. Wagon wheels groan and clatter as they roll over uneven ground, their wooden spokes stressed by weight and distance. Somewhere nearby, metal strikes metal, tools being adjusted, equipment repaired, doors reinforced against wear. These sounds repeat day after day until they fade into the background, noticed only when they stop. Smell is just as persistent as sound. It is not a single scent but a mixture that changes subtly throughout the day. Dust hangs in the air, dry and sharp, carried on every breeze and stirred up by every footstep. It settles on skin and clothing, blending with sweat and becoming something heavier, something that lingers. No matter how recently you washed, the smell returns quickly, as if the land itself insists on leaving its mark. Animals contribute strongly to this environment. Horses, essential for transportation and labor, are everywhere tied to posts, led through streets, resting in nearby yards. Their presence brings warmth, movement, and a steady layer of scent that people no longer question. Other animals wander freely as well, moving between buildings and through open doors. Their noises, clucking, bleating, shuffling, become part of daily life, as familiar as human voices. Food smells drift through the town as the morning progresses. They are heavy and simple, carried on the same dusty air. Grease, smoke, and boiling water combine into a scent that signals nourishment rather than pleasure. It is not the smell of variety or freshness, but of sustenance prepared the same way every day. These smells are comforting in their own way, reminding people that a meal is coming, even if it will be plain. The lack of separation between personal space and public life means there is no escape from these sensory experiences. There are no quiet rooms, no controlled environments. Even stepping outside offers no relief, only a different version of the same constant stimulation. The street is just as loud as the boarding house, just as full of movement and unpredictability. Children run past, adults call out instructions, animals shift and react to unfamiliar sounds. This constant stimulation wears on the body and mind over time. Rest is shallow, concentration fragmented. Tasks are completed amid interruptions, and patience becomes an essential skill. People learn to pause mid-action, resume conversations after disruptions, and continue work without complaint when attention is pulled elsewhere. Adaptation happens slowly but thoroughly, shaping behavior until distraction feels normal. The sense of smell also plays a practical role. People learn to read their environment through it. Smoke might signal cooking, warmth, or danger. A sudden unfamiliar scent could mean spoiled food, illness, or a problem nearby. Without modern systems of warning or communication, the senses act as early alerts, and ignoring them can carry consequences. What might feel overwhelming to a visitor is, to residents, a source of information. Personal cleanliness is difficult to maintain under these conditions, and everyone understands this. Clothing absorbs the smells of daily life: smoke from fires, dust from the street, sweat from labor. Washing garments requires time, water, and fuel, all of which are limited. As a result, clothing is worn repeatedly, aired out when possible, and washed only when absolutely necessary. The smell becomes familiar, even comforting, because it represents continuity. Disruptions are not occasional. They are expected. Plans change without warning. A sudden noise might signal a wagon arriving with supplies, drawing people away from their tasks. An animal breaking free can cause brief chaos, redirecting attention and effort until order is restored. Even weather plays a role, as windstorms or sudden changes in temperature alter the rhythm of the day. Flexibility becomes more valuable than precision. Despite all this, life continues with a steady pace. People do not rush to eliminate noise or odor. They accept them as part of existence. Complaining would require energy better spent elsewhere. Instead, there is a quiet resilience, a shared understanding that discomfort is not a personal failure but a collective reality. Everyone is subject to the same conditions, and that shared experience creates a subtle sense of connection. Moments of relative calm do exist, but they are brief and often unnoticed until they pass. A pause between wagons, a lull in conversation, a still moment when the wind drops and dust settles. These moments feel fragile, easily broken by the next sound or movement. People rarely comment on them, but they register all the same, offering a short breath before the noise resumes. As the day moves forward, the sounds and smells shift rather than disappear. The morning's bustle gives way to the steady rhythm of work, punctuated by voices and movement. Later, the evening will bring its own set of sensations: lower voices, slower steps, different smells rising from cooking fires. But at no point does the world fully quiet down. Living in the Wild West means existing in constant awareness of your surroundings. The senses are always engaged, always processing. Over time, this shapes the way people think and react. There is less room for inward focus, more attention directed outward. Survival depends not just on strength or skill, but on awareness, on hearing what is happening nearby, noticing changes in the air, responding quickly when disruption becomes danger. By accepting the noise and smells as permanent companions, people learn to function within them rather than fight against them. The environment does not bend to personal comfort. Instead, individuals bend to fit the environment. And as the day continues, this constant sensory presence becomes the backdrop against which all other aspects of frontier life unfold. Hygiene in the 1870s Wild West is shaped not by comfort or routine, but by availability, effort, and necessity. Cleanliness exists as an idea rather than a standard, something people aim for when circumstances allow rather than expect as part of daily life. The concept of feeling fresh or fully clean is unfamiliar. Instead, people learn to manage degrees of dirt, adjusting expectations to match reality. Water is the foundation of hygiene, and it is never taken for granted. Every drop must be carried, pumped, or drawn from a nearby source, often shared by many others. This makes water precious. Using it for washing the body competes directly with cooking, drinking, and cleaning tools. Because of this, personal washing is limited, brief, and purposeful. No one stands under flowing water, letting it run freely. Each movement is measured, each splash intentional. Morning routines reflect this scarcity. Washing the face and hands is common, as these areas are most exposed to dust and contact. A small basin is filled with cold water, sometimes warmed slightly if fuel is available. A rough cloth is dipped in, wrung out, and passed over skin quickly. The water clouds almost immediately, turning gray with dust. When finished, the same water may be used by someone else, especially in shared spaces, until it is too dirty to serve any purpose. Soap exists, but it is harsh and utilitarian. Often made from animal fat and lye, it cleans effectively but strips the skin of moisture, leaving it dry and irritated. Using it too often causes cracking and discomfort, especially in cold or dry weather. As a result, soap is reserved for times when dirt becomes unbearable or when illness threatens. The idea of daily full body washing feels excessive, even wasteful. Hair care follows a similar pattern. Hair is washed infrequently, sometimes weeks apart, depending on conditions. Dust settles into it easily, and wind tangles it further. Brushing helps redistribute oils and remove loose debris, but it cannot fully clean. Hats and scarves are worn not just for warmth or style, but to protect hair from constant exposure. Over time, people become accustomed to the weight and texture of unwashed hair, barely noticing it unless something changes. Dental care is minimal and improvised. There is no standardized routine, no neatly packaged tools designed for comfort. Instead, people rely on simple methods passed down through habit and necessity. Twigs are chewed until the ends fray, then rubbed against teeth to remove surface debris. Powdered substances like salt or baking soda are sometimes used, though sparingly. These methods help somewhat, but they cannot prevent long-term problems. Tooth discomfort is common and accepted. When pain appears, people endure it as long as possible, adjusting how they eat and speak. Only when it becomes unbearable do they seek intervention, and even then, options are limited. Dental procedures are quick and direct, focused on removing the problem rather than preserving comfort. Fear is managed through resolve rather than reassurance, and afterward, life continues with little pause. Clothing plays a major role in personal hygiene, acting as both protection and burden. Garments absorb sweat, dust, and smoke throughout the day. Washing them requires large amounts of water and time, so it is done infrequently. Instead, clothes are aired out, shaken free of dirt, and brushed clean when possible. Repairs are constant. Tiers are stitched, patches added, seams reinforced. A well-maintained garment is valued not for cleanliness but for durability. The smell that clings to clothing and skin becomes familiar. It is not considered pleasant, but it is not offensive either. Everyone shares it. In a community where conditions are the same for all, scent loses its social power. Judgment is reserved for extremes rather than norms. Someone noticeably unclean might raise concern, but otherwise, personal odor is simply part of the shared environment. Bathing the entire body happens rarely and often marks a significant effort. When it does occur, it requires planning. Water must be heated, a tub or large container prepared, and time set aside. In many cases, the same bathwater is used by multiple people, starting with the youngest or those considered most in need. By the end, the water is cloudy and lukewarm, but the task is considered complete. Seasonal changes affect hygiene practices as well. In warmer months, sweat increases, but water sources may become scarce. In colder months, washing becomes physically uncomfortable, even risky. Cold water chills the body quickly, and drying off completely is difficult without heat. As a result, Washing is reduced further, and people rely more heavily on layered clothing to manage discomfort. Illness adds another layer of concern. Without a clear understanding of germs, people still recognize patterns. Certain smells, visible dirt, or shared water sources are associated with sickness. When illness spreads, communities adjust behaviors slightly, cleaning more thoroughly, isolating those affected when possible. These responses are based on observation rather than theory, shaped by experience instead of science. Despite the challenges, there is a quiet sense of care in these routines. People do what they can with what they have. Small acts, washing hands before a meal, rinsing a cloth, airing out bedding, carry meaning. They represent effort and intention, even when results are limited. Cleanliness becomes less about appearance and more about respect for oneself and others. Over time, the body adapts. Skin toughens, becoming less sensitive to irritation. Expectations shift, and what once felt uncomfortable becomes normal. This adaptation is not celebrated, but it is essential. Without it, daily life would feel unbearable. Instead, people move through their routines with efficiency, conserving energy for work and survival. Hygiene in the Wild West is not about achieving a standard. It is about managing reality. It reflects the broader rhythm of frontier life, practical, restrained, and shaped by necessity. Every action is weighed against effort and outcome. Nothing is done simply because it feels good. Everything serves a purpose, even if that purpose is only to make the next few hours more bearable. As the day continues, these small acts of self-care fade into the background. Hands grow dirty again. Dust settles once more, sweat returns. There is no frustration in this cycle, only acceptance. Cleanliness is temporary, effort constant. And within that understanding, people carry on, focused not on how they feel in the moment, but on what still needs to be done before night falls. Food in the 1870s Wild West is not a source of excitement or variety. It exists for one primary reason: to keep the body moving through another long day. Meals are shaped by availability, preservation, and effort, not by preference. What you eat today is likely what you ate yesterday, and what you will eat tomorrow if supplies hold out. The idea of choice is limited, and hunger, more than taste, decides what feels acceptable. Breakfast arrives early, often soon after waking, because work cannot wait. The meal is filling rather than satisfying, built around ingredients that travel well and spoil slowly. Biscuits are common, dense and dry, baked to last rather than to please. They are hard enough to require effort with each bite, especially for those with sensitive teeth. Beans, cooked long ago and reheated repeatedly, appear frequently, their texture softened but their flavor unchanged. Meat, when available, is treated with care. Fresh meat is rare and consumed quickly, while preserved meat lasts longer but demands patience to chew. Bacon is valued for its fat and durability, though it is often tough and heavily salted. Cooking methods are simple and repetitive: fried, boiled, or roasted over open flame. There is little room for experimentation, and no expectation of refinement. Coffee plays a central role in daily life. It is not prepared for enjoyment but for function. Brewed strong and dark, it provides warmth and alertness rather than comfort. Grounds are reused multiple times, producing a bitter liquid that carries more familiarity than pleasure. Still, coffee is cherished. It offers a brief sense of routine, a small marker that the day has officially begun. Meals are eaten quickly, often standing or sitting wherever space allows. Tables, when present, are shared, crowded, and worn smooth by years of use. There is no elaborate setting, no extended conversation. People eat with efficiency, focused on the work ahead rather than the food in front of them. Plates are scraped clean not out of politeness, but because nothing can be wasted. The act of cooking is labor-intensive. Fires must be built and maintained, fuel gathered, water carried. Each meal represents time and effort, which makes leftovers valuable. Food is reused until it is gone, sometimes stretched further by adding water or bread. The line between frugality and necessity is thin, and most people live directly on it. The smell of cooking food drifts through the town, heavy and familiar. It signals nourishment rather than indulgence. For some, it brings relief. For others, it reminds them of limited portions or uncertain supply. Hunger is a constant companion, sometimes quiet, sometimes demanding attention. People learn to ignore it when necessary, focusing instead on tasks that ensure future meals. Seasonal changes influence what appears on the table. During certain times of year, supplies run low, and meals become smaller and simpler. Fresh produce, when available, is prized, but it rarely lasts long. Preservation methods, drying, salting, smoking, dominate food preparation. These methods extend life at the cost of flavor, reinforcing the idea that eating is about survival, not enjoyment. Eating is also shaped by community. Food is often shared, especially in boarding houses or work camps. Portions are distributed carefully, and fairness matters. Someone who takes more than their share is noticed. This quiet accountability helps maintain order in environments where resources are limited. Sharing food builds bonds, even when the food itself is plain. Illness and fatigue influence how meals are experienced. On days when the body is weak, even simple food can feel heavy. On days of hard labor, the same meal may feel insufficient. Still, there is little adjustment. The food remains the same, and the body adapts as best it can. Complaints change nothing, and so they are rare. Cleanliness during meals is practical rather than formal. Hands are wiped, not thoroughly washed. Utensils are simple, sometimes shared. Cups and plates bear marks from years of use, their surfaces dulled and chipped. These signs of wear are not seen as flaws but as evidence of continued usefulness. Despite its limitations, food provides structure to the day. Meals divide time into manageable segments before eating and after eating. They offer brief pauses from labor, moments to sit, chew, and breathe. Even the most basic meal creates a rhythm, grounding the day in repetition. There is also a quiet sense of gratitude woven into these routines. Not spoken aloud, but felt. A full plate, however simple, represents stability. It means that supplies have not yet run out, that work has been done, that tomorrow is possible. This gratitude is not dramatic or emotional. It is steady and practical. As breakfast ends and dishes are cleared, the day moves forward. Stomachs are filled just enough, bodies fueled for hours of work ahead. The taste of the meal fades quickly, replaced by dust, effort, and focus. Food has served its purpose. And with that, the people of the Wild West return to their tasks, carrying with them the quiet understanding that every meal is both ordinary and essential. In the Wild West, the boundary between human living space and the animal world is thin and constantly shifting. Animals are not kept at a distance. They are woven directly into daily life. They move through streets, yards, and sometimes even indoor spaces with little resistance. Their presence is practical, expected, and unavoidable. To live here is to accept that animals are neighbors, co-workers, and occasional intruders. Horses dominate the landscape. They are essential for travel, labor, and trade, and their needs shape the rhythm of the day. They are tied to posts outside boarding houses, watered from shared troughs, and led through narrow streets that were never designed for such traffic. Their size and strength demand attention. A sudden movement or loud noise can cause them to react, and everyone nearby remains aware of this at all times. Living alongside horses teaches constant alertness. Smaller animals move even more freely. Chickens wander without direction, pecking at the ground wherever they find opportunity. They slip through open doors, scatter at sudden sounds, and return moments later as if nothing happened. Goats and pigs appear unexpectedly, drawn by food scraps or familiar paths. They do not recognize private property in the modern sense. Fences are minimal, gates often left open, and animals follow instinct rather than rules. Inside buildings, signs of animal presence are everywhere. Dirt and straw are tracked across floors. Feed is stored in corners or shared spaces. Insects follow animals indoors, carried unknowingly on fur and hooves. The effort required to keep spaces completely separate is simply too great, and so separation is rarely attempted. Instead, people adapt, stepping around animals rather than chasing them away, accepting interruptions as part of the environment. This closeness brings challenges. Animals make noise at all hours. A restless horse, a hungry pig, or a startled chicken can disrupt sleep or concentration. Cleaning becomes more difficult, as new messes appear as quickly as old ones are addressed. Food must be guarded carefully, as animals are quick to take advantage of any moment of inattention. Still, these inconveniences are weighed against necessity, and necessity always wins. Animals are also sources of warmth and comfort, though this is rarely spoken aloud. In colder weather, their presence adds heat to shared spaces. Their steady breathing, shifting weight, and familiar sounds become part of the background, offering a strange sense of continuity. Life feels active, moving, and grounded in something tangible. The presence of animals reinforces the sense that survival here is physical, immediate, and shared across species. Work revolves around animals as much as it revolves around people. Feeding, watering, grooming, and managing them takes time every day. These tasks are not optional. Neglect shows quickly, and consequences follow. An unfed animal becomes weak. An unwatched one wanders off. Responsibility is constant, and it extends beyond human needs. This shared dependence shapes behavior, encouraging routine and discipline. The smells associated with animals blend into the broader scent of the town. They are strong but familiar, rarely commented on. Over time, people stop distinguishing between different sources. Everything becomes part of a single atmosphere. The idea of removing these smells entirely feels unrealistic, even unnecessary. They signal life, work, and continuity. Danger is also part of this closeness. Animals are unpredictable, especially when tired, injured, or frightened. A sudden kick or bite can cause serious harm. People learn to read behavior carefully, watching ears, posture, and movement. Children are taught early to respect animals, not through lectures but through observation and experience. Awareness becomes instinctive. Despite the risks, there is a mutual reliance that defines the relationship. Animals provide labor, transport, food, and materials. In return, they receive care and protection. This relationship is not sentimental, but it is steady. Animals are not pets in the modern sense, but they are not treated as expendable either. Each one represents effort and value. The constant presence of animals also reinforces the idea that life here is not controlled or polished. It is organic, shifting, and responsive. Clean lines and clear boundaries do not exist. Instead, everything overlaps work and rest, indoors and outdoors, human and animal. This overlap creates complexity, but it also creates resilience. When one system falters, another often compensates. As the day continues, animals remain part of every scene. They stand patiently in the heat, move alongside people at work, and rest nearby when tasks slow. Their rhythms influence human rhythms, shaping when people move, pause, or adjust plans. Life does not operate in isolation. It unfolds as a shared experience across the entire environment. By accepting animals as constant companions rather than obstacles, people learn to live with fewer expectations of control. This acceptance reduces frustration and conserves energy. Instead of fighting the environment, they move within it, adapting moment by moment. In the Wild West, survival depends not on separation from nature, but on coexistence with it. This shared space, messy and unpredictable, becomes normal over time. What might feel overwhelming to an outsider becomes simply the way things are. Animals pass through, noise rises and falls, dust settles and lifts again. And within this ongoing movement, people continue their day, focused not on perfection, but on persistence. Clothing in the 1870s Wild West is chosen for durability above all else. Style, comfort, and appearance are secondary concerns, often ignored entirely. Every garment must earn its place by lasting as long as possible under harsh conditions. Clothes are not replaced seasonally or according to fashion. They are worn until they can no longer hold together, then altered, patched, and worn again. Most people own very few outfits. A shirt, a pair of trousers, a coat, and perhaps an extra layer for colder weather make up the majority of a wardrobe. These pieces are used every day, exposed constantly to dust, sweat, sun, and friction. Fabric fades quickly under the relentless light and wear. Colors dull, textures stiffen, and seams strain under repeated movement. Getting dressed in the morning is a practical process. There is no decision-making beyond what is clean enough and functional. Clothing is pulled on quickly, often while standing or sitting on the edge of a bed. Buttons are missing, replaced by knots or pins. Tears are common, especially at stress points like elbows and knees. Each repair tells a quiet story of past labor. The fabric itself is rough. Soft materials do not survive long here, and so sturdier textiles dominate. Shirts scratch slightly against the skin, especially when sweat dries and dust settles into the fibers. Trousers feel heavy, resisting movement at first before loosening with wear. Over time, the body adapts, growing accustomed to constant contact with stiff cloth. Layering is essential, not for style but for protection. Layers guard against sun, wind, and sudden changes in temperature. In warmer months, clothing traps heat but shields skin from dust and exposure. In colder seasons, layers provide insulation, even if they add bulk and restrict movement. Adjusting layers becomes a routine response to shifting conditions. Footwear carries particular importance. Boots are expected to handle uneven ground, long hours of standing, and constant pressure. They are broken in through use, shaping themselves slowly to the wearer's feet. New boots are stiff and uncomfortable, often causing blisters, but they are still valued. Repairs are frequent. Soles are replaced, stitching reinforced, leather softened with oils when possible. Hats serve multiple purposes. They protect from sun and rain, shield eyes from dust, and provide warmth when temperatures drop. They are worn almost constantly, becoming an extension of the person rather than an accessory. A hat left behind feels like a serious oversight, not a minor inconvenience. Washing clothes is a demanding task. It requires water, fuel, and time, all of which are limited. As a result, clothing is cleaned infrequently. Instead, garments are shaken out, brushed, and aired whenever possible. Dirt becomes embedded in the fabric, and smells linger. Over time, these signs of wear lose their meaning. Cleanliness is measured in function, not freshness. Repairs are done by necessity rather than skill. Not everyone knows how to sew well, but everyone knows how to make something last a little longer. Stitches are uneven, patches mismatched. The goal is strength, not appearance. A visibly repaired garment is a sign of resourcefulness, not neglect. Weather leaves its mark on clothing quickly. Rain stiffens fabric when it dries. Sun weakens fibers, making them brittle. Wind drives dust deep into seams. Clothing becomes a record of the environment, carrying its effects day after day. Wearing these garments means carrying the landscape with you. Despite the discomfort, there is a certain reliability in worn clothing. Each piece fits the body in familiar ways, responding predictably to movement. New clothes, when acquired, feel strange and untrustworthy at first. Familiar wear offers reassurance, even when it comes with rough edges. Social differences can sometimes be seen in clothing, but they are subtle. Wealth may show in slightly better fabric or fewer patches, but everyone is still subject to the same dust, heat, and labor. Clothing levels differences quickly, reinforcing a sense of shared experience rather than separation. At the end of the day, clothes are not removed with relief so much as with habit. They are hung, folded, or left where they fall, ready to be worn again. There is no sense of reset, only continuation. Clothing does not mark the beginning or end of the day, it simply moves with it. In this environment, clothing becomes a tool. It protects, endures, and adapts alongside the wearer. Comfort is something people learn to live without, replaced by function and familiarity. And as the day stretches on, these worn garments remain a constant companion, absorbing the effort and strain of frontier life without complaint. Bathing in the 1870s Wild West is not a refreshing ritual or a moment of relaxation. It is an event rare, planned, and often uncomfortable from start to finish. The idea of washing the entire body regularly feels impractical, even unnecessary, when weighed against the effort required. Cleanliness, in this context, is a temporary state rather than something to maintain daily. Water is the main obstacle. Every bath begins with the same question: is there enough water to justify using it this way? Water must be carried by hand from a pump, well, or nearby source. Each bucket is heavy, and each trip takes time and energy. Once collected, the water must often be heated over a fire, which requires fuel and attention. The process is slow, and nothing about it feels convenient. Because of this effort, bathing usually happens only when circumstances demand it. After long travel, during illness, or when dirt and sweat become impossible to ignore, a bath may be arranged. Even then, it is done with restraint. The amount of water used is limited, and every movement is careful, designed to make the most of what is available. Bathing containers are simple. A large tub, a metal basin, or even a repurposed barrel serves the purpose. Privacy is minimal. In shared living spaces, bathing often happens behind a thin screen or in a corner of a room. Others may be nearby, moving quietly or pretending not to notice. Modesty exists, but it is shaped by practicality rather than comfort. The water temperature is rarely ideal. It may be lukewarm at best, cooling quickly as time passes. In colder seasons, the shock of water against skin is immediate and sharp. The body tenses, breath catches, and the process becomes something to endure rather than enjoy. In warmer weather, the water may feel better initially, but it quickly becomes cloudy with dust and sweat, reminding you of its limits. Soap, when used, is harsh and functional. It cleans effectively but offers little comfort. The lather is thin, the scent strong and utilitarian. Prolonged contact leaves skin dry and tight, sometimes irritated. As a result, soap is used sparingly, focused on the most necessary areas. The goal is not luxury, but improvement, however brief. Bathwater is often shared. In households with multiple people, the same water may be used by more than one person, starting with those considered most vulnerable. By the end, the water bears visible signs of use. This practice is accepted without comment. Cleanliness is relative, and improvement is what matters. Drying off presents its own challenge. Towels are rough, heavy, and slow to dry. In cold conditions, staying wet for too long can be uncomfortable or even risky. Without steady heat, the body cools quickly. People dry themselves as best they can, dress promptly, and move on, the brief discomfort replaced by familiar layers of clothing. Between full baths, people rely on partial washing to manage cleanliness. Hands, faces, and necks receive the most attention. A damp cloth and a small amount of water can make a noticeable difference, even if it does not last. These small acts help maintain comfort and prevent the worst effects of dirt and sweat from building too quickly. Seasonal changes influence bathing habits significantly. In summer, heat increases the desire to wash, but water shortages may limit opportunities. In winter, the cold discourages bathing altogether. The risk of exposure outweighs the benefit, and people adjust expectations accordingly. Cleanliness becomes something to revisit when conditions improve. There is little emotional attachment to the act of bathing. It is not anticipated or remembered fondly. Instead, it is treated like any other demanding task, something to complete efficiently and then leave behind. Relief comes not from pleasure, but from knowing the task is done. Despite its rarity, bathing carries a quiet sense of renewal. For a short time, skin feels lighter, clothes sit differently, and the body moves with slightly less discomfort. This change is subtle and fleeting, but it is noticed. It reminds people that conditions could be different, even if they rarely are. As hours pass, dust returns. Sweat forms again. The effects of bathing fade into memory. No one expresses frustration at this cycle. It is expected. Cleanliness is temporary, effort constant. People accept this rhythm without resentment, understanding that comfort here is always brief. Bathing in the Wild West is not about indulgence or routine. It is about necessity, timing, and restraint. It reflects the broader reality of frontier life, where every action must justify its cost. And as the day continues, the body carries on cleaner than before, perhaps, but already adapting once again to the dust, heat, and demands of survival. In the 1870s Wild West, insects are not a seasonal inconvenience or a minor annoyance. They are a constant presence, woven into daily life as firmly as dust and heat. From the moment you wake until long after night falls, small biting, crawling, and buzzing creatures compete for space and attention. There is no true escape from them, only varying degrees of tolerance. Flies appear first and in great numbers. Drawn to food, animals, and human activity, they gather everywhere on tables, near cooking areas, around water sources. They land without hesitation, settling on skin, clothing, and meals. Swatting them away becomes an unconscious habit, performed without thought or frustration. Complete removal is impossible, and so effort is limited to managing their presence rather than eliminating it. Mosquitoes arrive with the heat and linger wherever water exists, even in small amounts. Wells, troughs, barrels, and damp ground provide ideal conditions. Their bites are small but persistent, leaving behind itching that distracts and irritates. Scratching offers brief relief but often leads to broken skin, which invites further discomfort. People learn to ignore the sensation as best they can, focusing attention elsewhere. Lice and fleas are quieter companions, less visible but more persistent. They live in clothing, bedding, and hair, spreading easily in shared spaces. Boarding houses, with their crowded rooms and infrequent washing, create ideal conditions for them. Discovering their presence is unpleasant but unsurprising. It is treated as a problem to manage, not a personal failing. Night offers little relief. Bed bugs emerge after dark, hiding during the day in cracks of wooden frames and walls. Sleep is often interrupted by itching or the uncomfortable awareness of movement beneath blankets. People shift positions repeatedly, hoping to find brief comfort. Rest remains shallow, and mornings arrive with the body already fatigued. Efforts to control insects are basic and inconsistent. Bedding is aired when possible, clothing shaken out and brushed. Fires and smoke provide temporary relief, driving insects away for short periods. Certain plants or substances are believed to help, though results vary. These methods reduce numbers slightly but never solve the problem entirely. The physical discomfort caused by insects blends into the larger pattern of daily strain. Itching joins soreness, stiffness, and fatigue as background sensations. The body rarely feels fully at ease. Instead, people grow accustomed to low-level discomfort, carrying it without complaint. Over time, tolerance replaces irritation. Insects also influence behavior. People choose sleeping positions, clothing layers, and daily routines with them in mind. Sleeves stay long despite heat. Collars are adjusted to limit exposure. Movements are measured to avoid stirring swarms. These adaptations become automatic, learned through repetition rather than instruction. Illness adds another layer of concern. While the connection between insects and disease is not fully understood, experience has taught people that certain conditions lead to sickness. When insects increase, caution increases as well. Communities respond by cleaning shared spaces more thoroughly or avoiding certain areas when possible. Despite everything, insects rarely dominate conversation. They are simply part of the environment, accepted with resignation. Complaining offers no solution and wastes energy better spent elsewhere. Instead, people focus on what they can control: work, routine, and preparation. The persistence of insects reinforces a broader lesson of frontier life. Comfort is temporary, and relief is incomplete. The body is always negotiating with its surroundings, adjusting and readjusting. Perfection is not the goal. Endurance is. As the day continues, bites accumulate, itching flares and fades, and attention shifts back to tasks at hand. Insects remain present but no longer central. They join the background of sensation that defines life in the Wild West, a constant reminder that survival here is not about eliminating discomfort, but about living alongside it. Basic necessities in the 1870s Wild West come with quiet risks that people accept as part of daily life. Two of the most essential, using the outhouse and obtaining water, are never simple, safe, or comfortable. They are tasks approached with caution, familiarity, and a certain level of resignation, because avoiding them is not an option. Outhouses are usually set a short distance away from living spaces, positioned for convenience rather than comfort. They are simple wooden structures, often leaning slightly, with gaps in the boards that let in light, air, and unwanted visitors. Inside, there is no refinement, just a rough opening, a wooden seat if you are fortunate, and the lingering smell of long use. Privacy is limited. Sounds carry easily, and the knowledge that others are nearby never fully fades. Using the outhouse during daylight is uncomfortable but manageable. At night, it becomes a different experience altogether. Paths are uneven, poorly lit, and sometimes shared with animals. Each step must be taken carefully. The dark hides hazards: loose boards, insects, or sudden movement in the distance. People move quickly, focused on finishing the task and returning indoors as soon as possible. Inside the outhouse, attention remains high. Insects gather in the shadows, and the air is thick and still. There is little sense of ease. The structure creaks with movement, reminding you of its fragility. Still, this is a familiar routine, repeated countless times, and familiarity brings a certain confidence. What once felt alarming becomes manageable through repetition. Water, equally essential, carries its own challenges. Clean water is never guaranteed. Wells, pumps, rivers, and shared barrels supply the town, but their quality varies. Water often appears cloudy, carrying sediment from the ground. Its taste reflects its source, sometimes metallic, sometimes earthy. People learn to accept this without hesitation. Collecting water is physical work. Buckets are heavy, especially when filled, and carrying them strains arms and backs already tired from labor. Spills are frustrating because they represent wasted effort. Each trip is calculated to balance need against fatigue. Water is used carefully, with little excess. Boiling water is common when possible, especially for drinking and cooking. This adds another step, another demand on fuel and time. When boiling is not possible, people rely on experience and luck. Illness is an understood risk, though not fully explained. When sickness spreads, water sources are often suspected first. Shared water sources create a sense of collective responsibility. Careless behavior affects everyone. Buckets are rinsed, spills wiped, and access managed quietly. There are no posted rules, but expectations are clear. Survival depends on cooperation as much as individual effort. These daily risks are not dramatic, but they are constant. They demand awareness without panic, caution without hesitation. People do not dwell on what could go wrong. They focus on what must be done. Fear is replaced by routine. As the day moves forward, water is fetched again and again, the outhouse visited as needed. These tasks fade into the background, yet they shape the rhythm of life. Each one is a reminder that survival here depends on managing small dangers repeatedly, day after day. In the Wild West, safety is not assumed, it is negotiated through habit, attention, and shared understanding. And through these ordinary acts, people continue, quietly adapting to a world where even the simplest needs require care. As the day stretches on, in the 1870s Wild West, fatigue settles into the body in a familiar, almost expected way. This tiredness is not dramatic or overwhelming. It is steady and constant, like a weight that never fully lifts. People do not ask whether they have the energy to continue. They assume they must, and so they do. Endurance is not celebrated or even acknowledged, it is simply part of being alive here. Work fills most hours of the day, shaped by necessity rather than ambition. Tasks are repetitive and physical, requiring attention more than inspiration. Muscles ache, joints stiffen, and small injuries accumulate. Scratches, bruises, and sore backs are so common that they rarely warrant comment. Pain becomes something to manage quietly rather than something to eliminate. Rest exists, but it is limited and brief. Short pauses are taken when possible, leaning against a wall, sitting on a crate, standing still for a moment to catch one's breath. These breaks are not planned or timed. They happen naturally, fitting into the flow of work rather than interrupting it. When the pause ends, movement resumes without discussion. Mental endurance matters just as much as physical strength. Days are long, and the outcome of effort is often uncertain. Crops may fail, supplies may run short, weather may undo hours of labor. People learn not to attach their sense of worth to results. Instead, they focus on effort itself, doing what can be done today, then repeating it tomorrow. There is little room for frustration. Complaining expends energy without producing change. When setbacks occur, they are absorbed into routine. A broken tool is repaired. A delayed delivery is waited out. A difficult day blends into the next. Emotional reactions are muted not because people feel nothing, but because expression does not ease the situation. Social support exists, but it is quiet and practical. Help is offered through action rather than words. Someone carries an extra load. Another steps in to finish a task. These gestures are not framed as kindness. They are understood as necessary for the group to function. Mutual reliance is built into daily life. Endurance is taught through observation. Children watch adults work through exhaustion and learn to do the same. There are no speeches about resilience, no lessons framed in abstract terms. The lesson is lived, repeated daily until it becomes instinctive. Strength is measured by consistency, not intensity. As evening approaches, the body moves more slowly, but work continues until it can reasonably stop. The light fades, signaling a natural boundary. Tools are set aside, not with satisfaction, but with relief. The goal is not to accomplish everything, but to accomplish enough. This form of endurance shapes identity. People see themselves not as exceptional survivors, but as ordinary individuals doing what must be done. Pride is quiet, rooted in persistence rather than achievement. Making it through the day without major trouble is enough. In this world, endurance is not heroic. It is routine. It is waking up tired and continuing anyway. It is carrying discomfort without drama and uncertainty without fear. And as the day nears its end, this quiet strength becomes the foundation that holds everything together, preparing people to do it all again tomorrow. When night finally settles over the 1870s Wild West, the meaning of success becomes very simple. A good day is not defined by progress, comfort, or happiness. It is defined by survival. If no one is seriously injured, if there is food to eat, if shelter holds against the night air, then the day is considered complete. Evenings are quiet, not because life is peaceful, but because energy has been spent. People move slowly, conserving what little strength remains. Conversation is brief and practical. Words are used to share information, not emotions. Stories, when told, are short and grounded in reality rather than imagination. Meals at night mirror the rest of the day, simple, repetitive, and functional. Food is eaten steadily, without ceremony. There is no expectation of pleasure, only nourishment. The act of eating is a reminder that the body will be needed again tomorrow, and it must be maintained. Darkness brings both rest and uncertainty. Without electric light, the night feels close and heavy. Shadows move easily, and unfamiliar sounds carry farther. Doors are secured, animals settled, fires reduced to embers. These routines provide a sense of control in an environment that offers very little of it. Sleep is approached with practicality rather than anticipation. Beds are hard, blankets are thin, and temperatures shift quickly. Still, exhaustion usually wins. The body accepts whatever rest it can get. Sleep may be shallow and interrupted, but it is enough to allow the next day to begin. There is little reflection on the past or planning far into the future. Life is lived in short segments, focused on what must happen next. Tomorrow's concerns are acknowledged, but not dwelled upon. Worry does not change outcomes, and so it is kept to a minimum. This way of living shapes priorities. Small victories matter more than distant goals. A repaired roof, a full water container, a healthy animal, these are achievements worth noticing. Progress is measured in stability rather than advancement. Community plays a quiet but essential role. Knowing that others are nearby, facing the same challenges, creates a sense of shared experience. People may not speak openly about fear or hardship, but they recognize it in one another. This unspoken understanding reduces isolation. As the night deepens, silence takes over. The day ends not with celebration, but with acceptance. Life in the Wild West is not about conquering the land or proving strength. It is about adapting, enduring, and continuing. In this world, survival itself becomes the standard. Each completed day is a small success, earned through effort, restraint, and persistence. And as sleep arrives, it does so with the quiet knowledge that simply making it through today is enough. As we step back from this quiet, demanding world of the 1870s Wild West, one thing becomes clear. Daily life was not shaped by adventure or legend, but by patience, routine, and constant adjustment. Survival depended on accepting discomfort, managing limited resources, and finding balance in a place that offered very little margin for error. Strength was not loud or dramatic. It lived in repetition, in showing up each morning, and in continuing even when the day promised nothing more than more work. The people of this era did not chase greatness, they focused on stability, on keeping life moving forward one small step at a time. In that sense, their lives remind us that endurance itself can be meaningful, even when it goes unnoticed. Thank you for spending this time with me and listening to this story from the past. I hope it helped you slow down, imagine another world, and find a moment of calm. Wherever you are, I wish you a peaceful rest, a gentle night, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next story.